Force is with you, young Skywalker. But you are not a Jedi yet.
Hello, welcome to Galactic Initiative. 40 years ago, before it inspired the age of sequels, The Empire Strikes Back was considered a long shot. Despite the unprecedented success of the original Star Wars, 20th Century Fox agreed to a distribution-only contract with George Lucas, and Lucas himself covered the movie's budget. His first writer passed away. His director battled blizzards and fires on location. His best actor refused a continuing contract. His pivotal new character was a puppet, and the bad guys, well, they won. In 1977, A New Hope launched summer blockbusters, state-of-the-art visual effects, and toy licenses. In 1980, the sequel would accomplish even more. Empire turned Star Wars into a series and brand that has spanned 4 decades and changed cinematic history. It set every studio on a quest for filmmaking's El Dorado, a mythical golden franchise. It included the most famous lines of the epic, and it proved happy endings were overrated. Today, according to reviews, The Empire Strikes Back is still the finest film in the Star Wars saga, and 33 of the 50 highest-grossing films are sequels. The first trailer for The Empire Strikes Back appeared during the fall of 1979. From that point on, the upcoming summer release generated extraordinary excitement. Lucas could not create a vacuum, but he took steps to protect the movie's twists and turns for audiences. The crew spent long stretches of production in Norway and England. Members of the Star Wars fan club received bits and pieces in the newsletter. Movie magazines like Starlog published a few articles. But when the movie premiered, the groundbreaking special effects took viewers by surprise. As did the story. It was dark. Very dark. On May 21st, 1980, after the dimmed lights, after the 20th Century Fox fanfare, after the Lucasfilm logo, after the screen displayed a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, and after the opening horns of Star Wars' main theme, the crawl began. It is a dark time for the rebellion. Although the Death Star has been destroyed, Imperial troops have driven the rebel forces from their hidden base and pursued them across the galaxy. Evading the dreaded Imperial Starfleet, a group of freedom fighters led by Luke Skywalker has established a new secret base on the remote ice world of Hoth. The evil Lord Darth Vader, obsessed with finding young Skywalker, has dispatched thousands of remote probes into the far reaches of space. I am your host, Jeff. David, Sean, and I will discuss The Empire Strikes Back for its 40th anniversary. Join us as we analyze the film and related topics. I hope you enjoy part 1. Welcome, David.
Hello.
Welcome, Sean.
Hello, my friend.
All right, let's get into the crawl. What do you think?
It carries forward the action from the previous film, right? Vader's after Luke. Luke blew up the Death Star. He's got a beef. I think it's good. It sets the tone for the film.
It does create a really nice transition from the first film to the second. I mean, in this case, you're dropping Imperial probe droids down to different planets and shooting them off, and it goes along with the scroll, and it's just a nice little lead-in to what we're about to go experience.
If it had started off in another pursuit, like a Star Destroyer chasing down another ship and shooting at it, even if it was shot from a different angle, that would have been problematic because that would have basically been the same opening scene just shot from a different perspective. But we're just seeing the ship launching the probes, and it's kind of a different feel.
The probe crashes into Hoth. We see the probe droid come out of the smoking crater. And I've always wondered, since Luke doesn't set his marker, I've always wondered if the Wampa's attack on Luke is the reason the probe droid discovers the rebel base. Like, if Luke had investigated and put down a marker, would the marker have caught the probe droid before it reached the power generator?
Right. And here we thought it was the convenience to cover up Mark Hamill's plastic surgery.
Well, it was that. It was that. Yeah.
Speaking of the Wampa, I mean, Luke is supposed to be force sensitive. Why didn't he sense the Wampa coming up behind him?
Yeah, he doesn't sense it at all. The Tauntaun picks up on it, but Luke's oblivious.
And the Tauntauns, of course, were native to the planet, right? So that would indicate, or that would probably be why they would be more in tune to that than Luke rolling around.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep. So the Wampa attack from 1980 to the special edition, did Lucas improve the film?
So I mean, I remember thinking it was pretty cool, and you know, adding what they did. It was a little bit more, I would say, gory for the most part, than what we're kind of used to in terms of Star Wars. Now looking back, I wish they would have kept it the same way. Not because I'm a purist, but I think not necessarily seeing the creature in its entirety leads to a lot more to the imagination and adds more to it than seeing the entire thing like we did in the past. Like, I mean, I want to use Spielberg as an example. I mean, he would use a lot of dark cuts and different angles and hide things to give you a little bit more of an opportunity to use your imagination. And I kind of like that. I mean, I appreciate that more as I get older and wish that they kind of would have kept it that way.
Because I know they clearly added, the sitting there eating and a lot of blood.
Yeah, and then he stands up and looks at Luke.
I guess I could go both ways on it, especially after having seen, the making of and the behind the scenes footage and all the problems they had in getting the Wampa to even work. I don't think that, that they would have ever been able to achieve what they were able to pull off in the special edition. But at the same time, was it really necessary to the film? Was it necessary to the plot or in advancing the story in any way? No. It doesn't detract for me, the special edition, but it's not as bad as some of the other special edition fixes in other films. I will say that.
True. I mean, Lucas clearly had a bigger plan for the Wampas. They struggled with the costumes. They struggled with the just filming, and they just couldn't make the Wampas work. But anyway, having said all that, I like the changes. There is a little bit of mystery when you can't see the creature, but there's a whole lot more excitement when you can. I'm leaping ahead a bit, but how much intelligence does the Wampa have? The Wampa sticks Luke upside down in ice. That's a fairly high degree of reasoning.
Well, he was basically trying to save him for a later meal. I mean, I think most creatures, I mean, you think about spiders, how they wrap their prey in a web for later on. I think it was just kind of one of those things that he was trying to do. I mean, he had his tauntaun meat, and then Luke was his dessert maybe later.
Right, but he hung him. He didn't just throw him on the floor of the cave. He actually hung him up like a slab of meat in a meat locker.
True.
I mean, that would obviously indicate some level of higher reasoning beyond, just pure primal instinct.
In addition to hanging Luke, it seems, well, obviously Luke loses all of the equipment on his saddle, which would have provided him with a shelter, food, etc. That's all gone. But the only part of his personal equipment that falls is his lightsaber.
How convenient.
Indeed.
Plot armor, yes.
Because though the Wampa showed reasoning in hanging him from the ceiling, I doubt it recognized the lightsaber as a weapon and knocked it off of him.
Yeah, I doubt that. It was a non-tasty morsel, so it didn't care.
So back to Luke on the Tauntaun, right? He sees the meteor crash. He gets on his comlink, and a familiar voice answers, Han Solo. Han has stuck around. He's still part of the rebellion, still friends. Great to reestablish that relationship almost immediately, and a great conversation between them. You get the snarkiness of Han as he's going to head back to base and leave Luke to it.
Yeah, so we even get the old buddy and all that kind of stuff. It's again, it establishes that time has passed between the two films, and these guys have been working together. Again, we don't know officially or technically how long, but you see the progression of the characters and their relationship just in that moment with that conversation.
And then the Wampa attack. Obviously, we're afraid for Luke, but we're going to leave Luke and we're going to follow Han as he rides back to base and into the main hangar. What a set was constructed, right? Terrific. And all of that was built. There is a matte painting used for the ceiling, but what a masterful job done to have the full-size Millennium Falcon and all the other ships around it, the X-Wings, the snow speeders, the hustle and bustle of the base, all the equipment. I just thought it was fantastic. It was so well done.
Oh, it's an amazing set. I mean, you got, with the land speeders snow speeders, and all the different things that they've done. The detail was just amazing.
Yeah, I would totally agree with that. Again, it's the fact that all of this stuff is built and it's there, and you get the appropriate perspectives and color and all that stuff, as opposed to either trick effects, special effects. The fact that they use that massive space and build that full set, and the fact that you, like you say, you can see everything going on. It carries forward that that Star Wars feeling of the lived-in universe and the actual working universe of there's machines and tools, and the guys are rolling around on those little personnel transports, and guys are working on the ships, and things are going in the background. It just feels like for lack of a better word, it feels real.
Yeah, there's a realism there that you watch the film 40 years later and all of that stands up very, very well. It's sharp.
A lot of the Hoth stuff, because it was shot in the snow, in real snow, on a real glacier, and they built the sets. None of it feels fake. There's very, very little that stands out, that you can point to and go, oh, that's clearly a special effect. And I mean, sadly, most of that has to do with the ships that are flying overhead. But when you see the troops on the ground, later on when we get to the ground assault, when you see all that stuff, it's just, it's like you're watching a real, again, I keep using the word real, but it's like a real war movie, right? You have a real siege, real troops, real snow. It's just awesome.
If this movie was made today by a lesser producer, a lesser director, that entire cavern would be CGI. So many of the effects would be CGI, and no matter how well done, there's an element of unreal that creeps in from time to time and takes you out of the film. And it's just impressive. And in 1980, when the film's released, really, so go back to 1979 for filming, the amount of money spent to create that, the scale of it, the scope of it, it's one of the things that really makes Star Wars special. It's fantastic filmmaking. So Han arrives back at the base, climbs off his Tauntaun, visits Chewie. We get the sense that the Falcon's in some rough shape. Though we can't understand Chewie, it's very clear what he's telling Han to do.
Right.
There's no gray area. Get your butt over here. I've been working on the ship while you've been out on patrol. I need some help. So, and then Han heads to the command center, and we see General Rieekan. Leia overhearing the conversation that Han has not paid his debt.
Makes you wonder where the money went.
Good point.
Yeah,
I mean, he was given his reward at the end of Episode 4 before he came back to help destroy the Death Star. He had the money.
He was.
The money was given to him. Yeah.
Did he reinvest it in the rebellion?
Well, so in the original Marvel comics, which are no longer canon and really shouldn't be, I can't defend them. In the original Marvel comics, he leaves Yavin 4, and he's immediately caught in a tractor beam, and the reward is taken from him by space pirates.
The irony.
In canon, having seen Solo, I'm inclined to believe he gives back the reward because the rebellion needs it. What do you think?
Makes sense. That totally makes sense. I mean, especially how Solo ended up with him basically giving away all of his profit that he got. So
His
yeah,
hyperfuel.
it's hyperfuel. Yes, thank you.
But it's interesting though, because he did leave with the appropriate amount of money to pay Jabba back. We assume from, at the end of that movie that we don't really care about it anymore because of the heroic moment. We blow up the Death Star. Everything's great. Everybody gets a medal. Yay, movie ends. But now we see him in the situation where he's talking about still having a price on his head. And it always kind of gets me where I kind of wonder, like, well, what did he actually do with the money, or what happened to the money? And like you say, expanded universe is no longer the universe. But he clearly didn't invest it in the Falcon.
No, he did not spend it on his ship. So Leia overhears, he turns to her. One would think, based on the relationship, that he would have told her first, but that's going to be part of the romance, right? Wouldn't you think, honestly, that with that news that he would have brought it to her first?
Well, it depends what kind of it all depends on, where they are in their relationship. I mean, they could be on great week or a not so great week, and I don't know, maybe she spurned him, or maybe Han went and got married and off on another adventure. Who knows? He probably
what
thinks
EU comics you read. So
I
said, or what EU comics you read.
Exactly.
Or the modern Marvel comics, for that matter.
Exactly.
Yeah, but no, you say the relationship, but what was the relationship? Right at the end of Episode 4, the relationship was Luke was crushing, and Han was kind of just screwing around.
He's jealous. Han's jealous.
Luke was jealous.
Han was jealous too.
Do you think a princess and a guy like me?
Exactly.
Yeah. He was totally messing with Luke.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely. He was trolling Luke so
he
much.
Was trolling, but he was trolling him, but he was also, I think, jealous because he could tell that there was something between the two of them.
Well, look, in the coming scene, when he talks about the bounty hunter on Ord Mantell, he says we.
It's we, but is it
the whole rebellion?
Is it the rebellion? Is it the leadership team? Is it him and Chewie? Is it, him and the droids? We don't. Is it the royal we? I don't know.
Oh no, I take it as the literal we. I think Leia was there.
You could take it. I mean,
you could take it
either way. Yeah.
You take it anyway. She could have been there, but she could also have been there with like 25 other people, right?
Sure. All right, so he will try to say the quick goodbye, the so long, and he knows that she's going to follow him, or he guesses that she's going to follow him. I mean, how does he play
I think he's afraid of the confrontation. I think he's just like, I got to go. I don't want to have to deal with this. I'm out.
Well, maybe. Because the conversation that they have is, I don't know why, like, Jeff brought up a moment ago, why he doesn't talk to her first off screen, but
she'd rather kiss a Wookiee.
He can arrange that.
Yeah.
But that's later. That fight is later.
And at that point, she's still angry at him for leaving.
Yes.
Right.
Or for saying that he's going to leave. So that's a lingering argument.
Right. But in this moment, he comes in, he says, hey, there's a bunch of stuff going on, out there. I've helped set up the perimeter. You guys are going to be relatively safe, but I have to take care of my personal business. I've got to get this thing figured out with the bounty hunters. And, everything was going okay. And then we ran into the dude and whatever. And the general's like, all right, man, he goes, I hate to lose you, but, you got to do what you got to do. Princess Leia overhears that. He turns to her and he tries to play it in the middle. Like, he doesn't fully, give her the, I am going to miss you and I don't want to go. But he doesn't give her the full Han Solo, like the whatevs. He doesn't do that. He kind of does it somewhere in the middle where he says, well, Your Highness or whatever it is, this means goodbye or whatnot. And then she gives him the full cold shoulder attitude problem. she's like, well, yeah, whatever. And then he's like, well, don't get all mushy. He's like, don't get all mushy on me. And then he takes off, right? She in the moment provokes his response, but then of course she runs out the door after him, right? So it would indicate to me that there is some kind of relationship they have there that is not fully resolved. Like they both clearly have feelings for each other, but they both annoy the hell out of each other. And so, who knows what's going on there, but clearly, I don't know if Han is Palpatine level game player where he can say, well, I'm going to say this because I know she'll follow me out in the hall. Like I don't know if he's fully there, but yeah, but that conversation did not turn out how Han Solo thought it was going to turn out when he started it, for sure.
As with many things in Han's life.
It's not my fault.
So then in the hallway in front of passing rebel personnel, there's an argument.
Dudes, yeah.
Yeah, it's just people are stopping, people are staring. There's an argument going on. At one point, Han has his finger in Leia's face, but then we get a sense of the romance that's to come because he just takes it right there with her. He gets very blunt. You're just afraid that I would leave without giving you a kiss, and that totally shifts the focus off of why are you leaving at our moment of need to, oh no, absolutely not. No, I'm not. I don't feel that way about you. So then we're back to Luke hanging in the ice cave. In the special edition, the Wampa is eating his tauntaun, and he is in a very, very bad way. His weapon is laying in the snow several yards away from him, out of reach. And he's going to die unless he comes up with a solution. So this is the first time that we actually see the Force move an object, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Because up to this point, we've seen the mind trick. We've seen
lightsaber duel.
Well, we've seen lightsaber duels. We saw him with using his senses to see the drone. We had
blowing up the Death Star. He got help.
Right. We had Obi-Wan also do the tricking the stormtroopers by making them hear something somewhere else. Mm-hmm. And then yes, we had the Force Ghost talking at the end with Luke and blowing up the Death Star, but we did not see a pure manipulation of the physical world in Episode 4 with the Force.
And we don't have a lead in. We just see Luke struggling to reach the saber. He can't. And then there's this moment of relaxation. His body, which is very tense to that point, you can see it when he extends his hand again. He looks very peaceful, very calm, despite the Wampa being alerted to the fact that he's awake and now moving toward him. He manages to keep that calm, that concentration. He summons the saber, frees himself, slices off the Wampa's arm, and clambers out of the ice cave. He does not finish off the Wampa. Is that fear that's driving him? Because as I look back on it, he obviously would have been better served to kill the Wampa and stay in the cave, and he might even have found some of his survival gear from his dead tauntaun.
Absolutely, yeah.
What do you think?
It's an irrational fleeing of the scene. I think it's kind of one of those, he was not using his higher brain in that moment. I think it was just more of an emotional response of, fear, get away, run.
Fight or flight.
Well, he did both.
Yes.
That would be fight and flight, David.
Yes. Thank you.
So, he makes a rash decision, stumbles out into the snow. We move from the first use of the Force to move an object to the first Force Ghost.
And we were talking about, the fight or flight instinct. And it's interesting. It almost feels like these things are manifesting themselves in Luke while he's under duress. Because who would have taught him these things, right?
Exactly. Why would he think that he could move an object with the Force?
But Obi-Wan was talking to him in A New Hope. So it's not inconceivable to think that, like, Qui-Gon communed with Yoda in between Episode 4 and Episode 5. Obi-Wan could have started his training, and and obviously he needed Yoda to finish it, but giving him some tips and tricks.
Sure, but to take this to a practical level, Lucas wanted to recast Alec Guinness. He was a fan favorite from the first film. He was one of the only critically acclaimed actors, well, almost the only critically acclaimed actor in the entire film. Alec Guinness was having some issues with his eyes at the time, and he wouldn't commit to the full film. Lucas tried and tried multiple meetings to get him, and finally convinced him to have small parts. So is the Force Ghost, on a practical level, is the Force Ghost simply a way to get Alec Guinness back into the film? Do we think that Lucas had it planned all along? Is the truth somewhere in between?
Oh, I think it was just a way to get him back into the film. So using this
True.
as an opportunity to have him be a Force Ghost or play small bits and parts in the movie is a great way to do that.
Well, it would have been interesting to hear what the explanation was for him disappearing. So if you're going to bring him back as let's say Alec Guinness is doing great, he's feeling fine, he wants to be in the film. Lucas writes him a part. Well, the first thing you have to do is explain what exactly happened in that moment where you disappeared. Now, Lucas is either extremely intelligent and canny in his filmmaking, or he's very lucky, because Star Wars was made and there was no guarantee there was going to be a second one. And so a lot of the things in that film were done and wrapped up in such a way that if there was never another one made, you weren't really left with any lingering questions, right? The Death Star has exploded. The good guys won. Everybody except for Chewie gets some medal, and they all go home, right? And you might say, okay, well, Darth Vader flies off, so he's still there. So if there is a sequel, we know Darth Vader will come back. And we hear Alec Guinness's voice while Luke is flying the trench run, and we assume that there is, at the very least, there's something to this conversation that Obi-Wan has been having with Luke about the Force, that it is a larger power in the universe, or that there's more to it than parlor tricks like Han thinks. So you can say it was set up, but I don't know if Lucas, he may have had a general idea. It seems like Lucas always has a general idea about something. And if you look at the original, his very first attempt at writing down the screenplay of Star Wars, there was a whole lot more stuff going on that wound up getting either chopped out completely or reorganized into the later films. So having said that, it might be somewhere in between. He may have kind of had an idea that if we move forward, I have some things I can do with this character, but I don't know if he really thought it out to the point of, is there going to be a Force Ghost, or is it going to be maybe he teleported himself, right? I like the way it worked out. Clearly, all the Star Wars fans like the way it worked out, but so many things in this film, like the first third of this film is cleaning up stuff that's happened off screen to actors and their lives, simply to get to the point of making the sequel. We had, again, Mark Hamill got in a big car wreck, messed up his face. We had to explain why he doesn't look like the same dude from the previous movie, so Wampa attack. Alec Guinness is having health problems, so he can't be a primary character in the film, so we're going to have him show up from time to time, and Force Ghost, right? So I don't know. I'm sure reality is somewhere in the middle.
Well, and don't forget that the original screenwriter, she passed away. I'm quickly scanning through her first version. Yeah, it just said that Obi-Wan was just simply a voiceover. It wasn't necessarily written in as a ghost.
He was originally written to carry forward what we got from him at the end of the last film. Yeah, right. as the wise voice from beyond that offers guidance and whatnot. But Lucas, he was really not excited about where she was taking the whole thing. So while we have a copy of that, we also have to understand just because it's there in the first draft doesn't mean that it's like this was the original intent. I mean, it goes through so many
Oh, absolutely.
visions. Yeah.
And you know what? It's funny reading this. It doesn't even mention anything about Luke going to Dagobah and being trained by Yoda. It just has the overlay of Obi-Wan saying, "Remember the Force, opening up your heart," and then it talks about Luke stumbling through the snow some more, and then that's it.
And though this is the first Force Ghost, we're not even sure if Force Ghosts are a thing until later in the film when Obi-Wan comes back. Because obviously in Luke's condition in the snow, we don't know if this is Luke's mind playing tricks on him, delirium, or this has actually happened.
I think that's really good filmmaking because we know the Force can do stuff, but we don't know what it can do. And here's Obi-Wan appearing, and like you say, is it just because he's near death and he's having one of these weird hallucinations because he's lost a lot of blood and he's out in the cold or whatever? And we don't find out, obviously, until later in the film that, no, this is actually a real thing that goes on with the Force and that, you know, we can commune with the dead and all this other stuff. Especially when, at the end of that appearance, you know, he says, "Go to Dagobah," and he's like, and he's giving him, you know, his marching orders, and he reaches out and says Ben, and then he disappears and Han rides through. Right. So is it a hallucination at that point? You know, in the film, especially like your first time viewing it, you know, like you have no idea what just happened. You know, it's important, but you don't know exactly if it was real or not.
Dagobah, Obi-Wan, that'll come later. Now you're going to immediately refocus on Luke's survival, Han's survival. To go back to the Rebel base, Han switches off the comm link. He needs to help Chewie with the Falcon. He's angry. R2 and 3PO show up. 3PO asks, "Have you seen Luke?" Leia's worried about him. And then there's some ordering around of low level.
The deck officer.
Yeah. Well, that's right. Yeah. But Han actually has rank here. He's a commander. So he is ordering around these rebel troops, trying to get an answer on Luke.
In the first film, they refer to him, you know, he's Captain Solo, right? But it's almost like an honorific, just because he owns a ship, he's the captain. It's not really taken seriously. But then in this film, he is Captain Solo, and even Vader refers to him as Captain Solo later on. He's no longer the roguish consultant who shows up at the end to save the day in Episode 4. He's fully ensconced in the leadership, you know, of the rebellion, and clearly he pulls some weight because, like you say, he just rolls over to that dude and he's like, "Deck officer, you know, get after it."
It's possible he came in through the south entrance. Possible.
Why
don't you go find out?
Exactly. Hey, you don't just get away with that if you don't actually, you know, have the power behind your title.
Right.
Because, you know, most guys would be like, "Yeah, whatever. You know, you're the roguish pirate guy who's, you know, chasing the princess around. Like, leave me alone. I got work."
So we see Han, you know, again, take control and then take action. There's a mention of the speeders, which is great because we'll see the speeders in a few scenes, but the speeders aren't going to work in the temperatures, and the Tauntauns aren't going to work either, but you know, that's his only option. So he takes it, he finds Luke, and then we have another first, and maybe a last, help me with this one, a non-Force user using a lightsaber. He uses the lightsaber to cut open the Tauntaun to save Luke.
Let's see, in film?
Yeah, sure. Well, anywhere across the Star Wars galaxy, there aren't.
Okay, so my only question would be, is General Grievous a Force user?
Yeah. Well, he's trained. He's trained in the Jedi arts. No, he is not a Force user. That's a good one. Excellent.
So he would be the only other person.
Excellent. Well, Finn.
Oh, yeah. Finn.
Oh, but he's Force sensitive.
May or may not have the
No,
voice?
they retcon that.
Oh, he's totally Force sensitive.
On Twitter.
No.
No. It's all something that occurred off screen with people on social media who work for Lucasfilm. So he was a non-Force user, especially in The Force Awakens. Like, he was clearly not a Force user.
Yeah, no, I agree with that.
Yeah, it's true.
So we have him, we have Grievous, and then there may be one or two people in the Clone Wars cartoon, but we're not. I mean, even though it's canonical, we're not calling it canon. It's not big screen canon.
So,
well,
Han,
but it is. Sorry, I don't mean to interrupt. But it is actually the first time chronologically in the release of films that we see that, right? So this is only the second film that's come out. This is someone who clearly, I mean, by his own admission, doesn't even believe in the Force, even though he's hung around a Jedi and a Jedi apprentice, not a Force enthusiast or believer. He picks up a lightsaber and cuts open a tauntaun. The thing about the lightsaber and the Force user and all that stuff, it's very much reminds me of a knight's sword. It's a tool. It's a blunt instrument, but the ownership and care for it has a higher value or a higher meaning to the knight than, say, someone who finds it on the side of the road. And this is something that we explore in the prequels later, where Obi-Wan is constantly lecturing, Anakin about hanging on to the sword and it's your life and all this stuff. That very much falls into the knights and squires and the training, in the Middle Ages. It doesn't mean that, nobody can just pick it up and not be able to use it. It's a letter opener. So a very sharp, very powerful letter opener.
A very dangerous
but a letter
opener. Yeah. So Han saves Luke, and then one of my favorite scenes in the film, it's a small thing, but the snowspeeders, the first appearance of the snowspeeders and the view from the cockpit as the speeder is careening over the canyons and mountains of Hoth. I love that scene.
It's it's good. It takes advantage of the scenery and the topography. It's minimal in the special effect, but you get that feeling. You're flying and it's action. It's a sharp injection of action into kind of I want to say slow, but it's definitely a more subdued moment there between Luke and Obi-Wan, and then Han trying to save the day, but it's really him just digging a hole in the snow. And then we have that jump the next day. The sun's out, the storm's over. You're flying low. There's a sense of urgency. You're on a rescue mission. Yeah, it's killer.
Yeah. I could feel it in the pit of my stomach on the big screen. It was it was a lot of fun. And then Han coming through on the comlink, nice of you to drop by. And the big smile for the pilot, just excellent. And you see the brake, for lack of a better word. I don't know what the equipment on the snowspeeder is actually called, but you see that wing pop out of the speeder and you see it bank almost at 90 degrees and swing back towards the camp. And I thought that was great too.
Well, again, it's that lived in real mechanical universe thing. It's like an aileron on an airplane. You adjust the airflow and the airplane moves in a certain direction. And again, same thing. And it's like, there's just enough science in this science fiction to make it really believable.
The one thing that's always bothered me about that scene is how far he seems to go. I mean, if you're going out at night on an ice planet, knowing that you have a certain amount of hours before nightfall and you're going to freeze to death, why would you go as far as those snow speeders? Because it seemed like they covered multiple miles.
Oh, they did. But Han and Luke were setting those. They had to set those mark. I'm really just speaking for the film here, so stop me if this doesn't make sense. But they had to set the markers far enough away from the base that anything that would trip the markers would not be anywhere near the base. They would have enough time to sound an alert and deal with. I'm guessing. I don't know. I mean, and the Tauntaun seemed pretty fast. They moved pretty fast, so I think it's fair to assume that Luke and Han were at least a few miles out.
No, I think that absolutely. It just seemed. I mean, the scene, like you said, is awesome. I usually get pits in my stomach when you dip and dive in movies and stuff like that. And this is like, man, how far out did he really get?
Yeah, the speeder's moving very, very quickly.
Yeah.
The pilot of that snow speeder, he'll be killed. His speeder shot down.
Rogue 2?
Yep.
I thought he just got a bloody nose.
He's blown out of the sky.
Oh, okay.
Well, that makes me sad.
Does he have a name?
Zev Sineska.
Sineska, yeah.
I don't think I've ever heard that
He
name.
was shot down by an Imperial adit.
Poor Zev,
We hardly knew him.
but he did his job on that day. He seemed like a good guy.
He was jovial. Yeah, he was. You make me sad today, Jeffrey.
I know.
Ah,
Yeah. Yeah. So
hurts my heart.
then we're back in the Rebel base. Luke is out of the tank. He looks a lot better. We can still see the scars on his face from the car accident in real life. His friends coming to check on him, the continuing argument between Han and Leia, the exchange of insults, Leia kissing Luke passionately. To go back to David's Lee bracket draft, Vader references Leia, talks about Luke not being strong enough to keep her from Han Solo, but if he used the dark side, he could have her.
Vader doing that is in line with Vader's character as established. He's pure evil, and he's going to do whatever he needs to do, means to an end, all that stuff. But if you did go that way, I mean, obviously Return of the Jedi is going to be a wholly different film. If you take that to its logical conclusion, you have the father trying to sell the daughter to the son in order to achieve the dark ends of taking over the universe. It's just like, whoa.
Whoa, that's
Yeah,
a little much.
I mean, that's, yeah.
Yeah, it would have been really, really weird. But it's
And that's being
interesting.
nice. It would have been really weird. Independently, Luke feeling that way and doing that is not necessarily inconceivable for his character. You know, again, it would be in a vacuum a logical progression of his character from Episode 4. He goes on this crazy adventure. He gets caught up with this attractive lady in a running gun battle, kind of gets some feels going. You know, so now here we are. Now they've been fighting this war together. They're comrades. They've experienced combat. They have a mutual enemy. They have mutual respect. Like, you could totally see that.
It doesn't make it to the finished product, but perhaps even as late as filming, they were still thinking about that angle for Vader tempting Luke at the end.
Move along. Move along.
We're going to leave the med bay, and the probe droid has made its transmission, and Han and Chewie are going to go check it out. Han hits the probe droid with a few laser blasts. Raiken's pretty sure it's an Imperial probe droid when Han mentions a self-destruct.
I really enjoyed this scene. You know, they kind of used Chewie as a decoy, and it was nice to see Chewie doing something besides fixing the Falcon.
Sure, yeah, it would have been nice to see him destroy the probe droid, but
True facts.
how did you find the design, the aesthetic of that Imperial droid?
I thought it was cool. Like, you know, it's kind of almost spidery in a way. And one of the things that I love about a lot of the Imperial design, everything they have feels like it's designed partially to intimidate. And the probe droid is no different. It just doesn't look friendly, you know?
No.
And that's the whole thing about the Empire. It's like, it's not here to make you feel warm and fuzzy. It's make you comply, you know?
Right. The size of the probe droid, that's a pretty large droid. That thing goes 7-8 feet tall from the top of its dome to the end of its spidery legs. It's a really big prop that they built.
The 501st built here in Seattle an actual life-size one of those, and it is. You're right. It is not a small piece of equipment.
Yeah, it's a trick of the perspective, you know, because you're getting the camera kind of almost over the shoulder of Han and Chewie while they're engaging with it, so it's farther off. And then when we do see it by itself on screen, we have no context. You know, it's floating along on the glacier there, and there's rocks in the background. We don't know how big those things are, so we kind of. And then again, the toy winds up being about the appropriate size. But as kids and then looking back in retrospect, none of the toys are actually really in any kind of real scale to one another. So we had no idea. So, but yeah, it is. It was. I was surprised when the 501st, when they built that thing and we rolled it out. I was kind of like, this is really big. And then you look at it and you're like, no, it's off the actual measurements of the one they built for the movie, and it was an impressive size thing.
Very far away from Hoth, one of the finest pieces of music ever recorded. We have the Imperial March, the Imperial Starfleet. It's quite impressive. When we first see the fleet, we see 2 Star Destroyers, but then we see a shadow. And when we pan up, a Super Star Destroyer, the Executor.
I thought it was slick. I really liked it. I thought it was really cool. And I loved the size of it.
The music and the introduction of that ship, the sheer power and imposing menace that is the Empire. Up to this point, yeah, they had the Death Star, which was this big scary thing. We blew that up, but we still have these big Star Destroyers. And then you see this thing that's not just a little bit bigger, it's exponentially larger. And so paired with that Imperial March, Vader's there and you're like, oh yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, because he's the baddest of the bad, and he has the biggest and most menacing ship in the fleet.
On top, the perimeter of the Super Star Destroyer is smooth. In the comic, Imperial-class Star Destroyers, a few of them are actually parked on that smooth area as if it's a landing strip.
Oh, that's cool. Now, was that in the comic adaptation of the film, or is that just in other comics?
The comic adaptation of the film.
Okay. All right.
Our first encounter with Darth Vader. He's on the bridge of the Executor, and his underlings are having an argument about a transmission from the Hoth system and what it might mean. It's a pretty clear transmission of the power generators at the Rebel base. The commander of the fleet, Admiral Ozzel, takes a patronizing tone, which is not a tone that you want to take with Vader. But it's just a great opening scene for Vader, establishing his authority, his dominance. You know, he just cuts Ozzel off. He has no time for the nonsense.
It establishes a change in Vader's status, I guess, in the Empire. Because when we see Vader in Episode 4, he's working for Tarkin. Now he's fully in charge, and people of Tarkin's, well, I don't know if at the Admiral is his rank, but high-ranking officers are now reporting directly to him. Even though Tarkin, you know, he's Grand Moff or whatever, that whole council of officers on the Death Star, even though the one guy that talks back to him and gets choked out, those are all high-ranking officers, and they're still all kind of, well, you know, you're the weird enforcer guy who works for Tarkin. He doesn't really have a rank or a position per se. I mean, yeah, you can grab a couple of TIE fighter pilots at the end and be like, yeah, you're coming with me, we're going to go fight. But this intro, he's riding on the bridge of the largest ship in the fleet, and everybody on that ship is working for him. So it's establishing him as the top dog in the entire Imperial military. And so again, it's a progression, it's a change, but it's definitely it's a shift from what he was in the previous film.
There is a change, and he's very decisive. He sees just a moment of the transmission from the probe droid, and he knows through the Force that's it, and we're going there now.
He's looking for some revenge. So I think he's more than happy to go to this system, whether it's actually them or not. And now that he obviously knows that's also his son, so he's got 2 reasons to go there.
The probe droid's made its transmission. The Imperial fleet's on its way. General Raikin is not naive, and the rebels don't hesitate. they will start the evacuation immediately. It still won't be fast enough. An interesting moment in the film, Vader's meditation chamber, a glimpse at Vader's helmetless head.
Well, I remember going back to see the movie just for that scene because it really started getting my mind thinking about what's his backstory, what's this all about? Why does he have all these scars? I loved it.
It was almost shocking. And I think that in a weird and grotesque way, this is the first step towards humanizing Vader. Vader's outfit is not just to intimidate people; it also serves some kind of purpose in preserving this person who's inside. And like David said, it was kind of it was a very important moment in the film. He hides this from everyone. Your curiosity is piqued, right? You're like, okay, there's something going on. There's a dude in there, and I want to know more about that dude. It really kind of changes the audience's way of engaging with the character of Darth Vader.
General Veers, the actor playing Veers, gives us a great reaction to catching that, both curious and repulsed. Obviously, there's a fear factor that Veers wouldn't have told anyone based on what he's about to witness Vader do, and that is to kill Admiral Ozzel using the Force from his meditation chamber to the bridge of the Executor. He chokes Ozzel before Ozzel can offer any explanation as to why the rebels are alerted to the Imperial Starfleet, why their shield is up. Ozzel gets out a couple of words, and then he is dead. Vader's rage, his focus on Skywalker, his intolerance of incompetence, and there's a battlefield promotion. Captain Piet has become Admiral Piet as Ozzel takes his last gasps of breath and then falls to the floor. And we see Piet take a quick sideways glance to see what happened to Ozzel as he's getting his promotion. Another great scene with Vader.
It's like, get him up, Vader's home. Yeah. Yeah.
No, but I mean, it's a great show of power by Vader. Who's the boss? Don't mess with me. You screw up, there's going to be consequences, type of a thing. And next man up.
The Imperial Starfleet arrives in the Hoth system. There will be a ground assault. We don't know how. The Imperials will be required to destroy the shield generator in order to get at the Rebel base. But in the meantime, the Rebels are evacuating. We see my least favorite vehicle in the entire Star Wars series. It's the Rebel transport. I hate this ship. It just doesn't make sense to me. It is a piece of junk. Anyway, Rebel transport, the two X-Wings flying toward a Star Destroyer. The Imperial captain is very confident. Our first catch of the day. But then we're introduced to the ion cannon. Those bolts streaking past the X-Wings and disabling the Star Destroyer. Didn't love that. Thought it was kind of a wonky special effect at the time. What say you?
It's definitely one that doesn't hold up. I mean, the laser bolts themselves going past, or the ion shots or whatever, going past the ships. The rest of that scene is really, I mean, again, well executed, by ILM or whatever. But I do like the effect, though, when they hit the Star Destroyer and how it looks like an electrical charge going through. It's like, an EMP basically, and it's killing all the lights on the ship and all that, and then it starts to drift. I mean, it's a cool weapon. It's an interesting way to defend yourself. It's not necessarily a destructive weapon. It's not this thing that's designed to shoot Star Destroyers out of the sky. I mean, it almost kind of philosophically fits into the rebellion in a way, right? These are the freedom fighters. These are the people who they're not going to kill you unless they absolutely have to, and that they're going to build this massive defensive system on this base that's only designed to turn the engine off on your starship.
This goes back to episode 1.
How so?
The
blockade. Yes.
Yes. Yeah, go a different way. It's not that hard.
Well, especially when there's only one ship.
but here we've seen the Imperial Starfleet, And so when we see the first transport and the two X-Wings trying to get away, there's only one Star Destroyer in its way. And I say only. Having seen the Imperial Starfleet, we know how many Star Destroyers make up the fleet. In this case, it makes sense that they've come to Hoth, they've blockaded the planet, they've spread out, they've dispersed. They're not clustered around the Executor. They're going to try to catch absolutely every rebel trying to escape from the planet. I mean, that makes perfect sense. That makes a heck of a lot more sense than the Trade Federation sending away all its battleships and loosening its blockade at a time when it needed it.
The convenience factor of those targets happen to be directly in the cone of fire for that one thing that's on that one portion of the planet. And I know that they're protecting the transports, but it's like maybe you could send the transports off, out of the atmosphere on the other side of the planet where the blockade isn't. But.
Agreed.
Yeah, it feels a little Rise of Skywalker in that moment.
So from the ion cannon back to the planet, we know there's a ground assault coming. Some very nervous rebel soldiers, and the threat comes in the form of Imperial walkers, AT-ATs. This is one of my favorite scenes in the movie. It's one of my favorite scenes in the entire Star Wars series. Say what you will about stop motion photography, and it's the best that was available at the time. It doesn't quite stand up 40 years later. It would have been CGI today, but it is still, I think the design of the vehicles is so cool, and the fact that they're machines and they're a little herky-jerky to begin with, but just that, the music from John Williams, that thump, 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 impending doom, what's coming for us. Just love this battle.
Oh, I'm going to disagree with you a little bit and say that I think it holds up quite well. I mean, the fact that they only had to tweak a few things in the special editions, and that mainly had to do with the whiteness of the snow. I mean, I thought it was awesome. One of the best, if not the best, action sequence of the entire trilogy. From them seeing the AT-ATs, how tall these things actually are, to the guys in the trenches, preparing for the battle. And I think they realize we're not here to win this. All the different sequences that they do with the snow speeders not being able to penetrate the armor, the tow cables. I love that entire scene.
I would agree. The intro portion, the guys are all lined up and they're waiting. And the dread and the building tension, and then finally the reveal of the walkers. It's out of every great war movie. It carries forward that tradition, the guys in the trenches and fighting off the Empire and all that. And you can watch it today and it's fine. It doesn't, even though they like you say, they tweaked a few things, it wasn't really fundamentally changed. And one of the things, just as a quick aside, of all the films, they did a lot of work on this movie for the special edition, but made this movie better. You can't say that of some of the other changes in the other films. So having said that, there's still a few moments in the film where you can clearly tell that it's special effects of the day, but it's not so egregious that it takes you out of it. The whole Hoth experience in this film is fantastic. There is a doom and an inevitability about the outcome of this battle, but at the same time, it's inspirational. And you see, these individual acts of heroism through the various pilots and Luke and the guys fighting the snowtroopers, and it's great filmmaking and it's great storytelling.
Well, watching the snow speeders go up against the walkers is great. Luke fails on a number of levels here. He manages to destroy one of the AT-ATs, but he is not the hotshot pilot. His gunner is killed and his snowspeeder is shot down and he has to scramble for his life. Luke's achievements feel earned. So far in this film, ambushed by a Wampa, almost killed by the elements, fails in the battle against the walkers.
Yeah, it's true. Again, it's all this effort and this never giving up, never quitting, attitude that Luke has. Yeah, he crashes. He's not a superhero, right? You can't win every battle, and it's not realistic. And if he won every battle, it would take away from the story, and it would maybe like, well, just have Luke do it. He never loses, right? And the fact that he has to adapt and overcome. So he crashes. So now he's like, well, I can still put a bomb inside this thing at great risk to myself as an individual climbing up the side of a walker. His whole concern is to defeat this device and save these people that are trying to evacuate. It does not feel like his character wins because he's supposed to or because it's Luke, and Luke always wins. It's like he wins because even though he has these setbacks, he still fights through them and finds a way to win. He doesn't win because it says he has to win in the script. He wins because he works at it.
Yeah, great points. It's nice to see Wedge, to know that Wedge is still fighting for the rebellion. The walkers firing on the trench, destroying the rebel dish guns and turret guns and killing soldiers. General Veers destroys the power generator. In a deleted scene and a scene that was in the comic, a snow speeder that's been damaged that can't steer crashes directly into the head of his walker and he's killed. Back to what we were talking about a few minutes ago with Vader in the meditation chamber and the helmetless head. The one person who sees him is gone, and obviously General Veers does not reappear. But the power generator is destroyed despite the loss of, let's count, 3 walkers?
Yeah, 3 of the 4 for sure, yeah.
Yeah.
There was 4, right?
Well, it's hard to tell overall. In the scan from the rebel officer with the electro binoculars, I believe he sees 3, and then we get some wide shots with 2 to 3. I don't know how many walkers are there in total.
It looks like 5.
5, okay.
Yeah, it looks like there's 5 in the opening clip.
And do I have that count correct? Did 3 go down?
1, 2. Yes, I would say there's 3.
Go down. Still not enough. I think of Rogue One here. Stay with me for a moment. In Rogue One, we see X-Wings operating against walkers, and it's a different version of the walker. It's a cargo hauler. I think of that, and then I think of The Empire Strikes Back, and why didn't they use X-Wings? And it makes perfect sense because they needed the X-Wings to protect the transports, and they don't have an abundance of snow speeders or X-Wings, but the X-Wings couldn't be spared. Why don't the rebels have a weapon strong enough to punch through the armor of an AT-AT? Well, they do, but they just can't make use of them in this circumstance.
That's perfectly logical. Like you say, the only X-Wing that's left at the end of the whole thing is Luke's, and it's because he was out flying a speeder. One thing that is still confusing: why do the snow speeders have tow cables? Like, what do they tow?
Great question. I imagine if you used 2 snow speeders and 2 tow cables, you could haul something fairly large.
Okay, that's great. And there's nothing wrong with repurposing things, for combat. I mean, let's talk about the history of barbed wire for a minute. I'm sure there's a logical explanation somewhere, but again, it hit me the other day. I was thinking about that. And I was like, what do we tow in order for us to have tow cables on these ships that can be repurposed as an offensive weapon?
Well, you might have just hit on the next great idea for supplementary content. Someone needs to write a story with the snow speeders using the tow cables.
Oh, I'm sure there's a YA novel about it right now, or maybe a 6 comic book, series about C-3PO's red arm and a tow cable.
All right. So on the heels of that question, let me pose another. So on foot, Luke makes his way to a staging area, basically an airfield, after he blows up an AT-AT. So why isn't the staging area under attack? The power generator's been destroyed. There's no shield protecting the base. And this staging area, this airfield, it has transports and X-Wings being loaded and just sitting on the ground. he just walks to it. He leaves the battlefield and just over that hill, there's an airfield. And then when he flies off Hoth, there are no Imperial starships of any kind to be seen. There are no Star Destroyers. There are no TIE fighters. He has a calm, leisurely fly off Hoth. So I guess it's two questions, really. Why isn't the staging area under attack? And then why aren't there any Imperial ships waiting for him in orbit?
Where it was located? Maybe on the backside of the mountain. But yeah, it's very apparent that nobody in that staging area is in any hurry whatsoever. We're just going to get a couple ships ready here, and then off we go.
The thing about Luke getting off the planet is what really kind of stands out. Like, you don't know where that staging area is. You don't know how, what the relation, how far or close it is to the base. I mean, it's nearby, obviously, but the big thing for me is that, like you say, that there's supposed to be, like, we start off, to rewind slightly, we have hundreds of ships. We got Vader's Super Star Destroyer. We're taking the fleet, through hyperspace. When we get to the planet, we see one ship gets zapped by the ion cannon, and we don't see another Star Destroyer until later. And Luke, like you say, just flies off by himself. A single X-Wing fighter fleeing the system is not necessarily a top priority, but there was clearly enough ships in the fleet to surround that planet, literally. And each of those ships carries enough TIE fighters that even one X-Wing fighter shouldn't get out of the system. It does feel weird. It's again like our conversation we had about Episode 1. There's a blockade, and now there isn't. And there's no real conversation as to why or how or what's going on there.
And these are, in asking these questions, I'm raising minor criticism.
Oh yeah, they're very
of the film. I mean, this is it. Anyway, that brings us to the base. Leia is still in the command center, working, trying to get transports and X-Wings away safely. Han stumbles in. The repairs on the Falcon haven't been complete, but he's clearly very concerned about her, wants to get her out. Collapsing tunnel, hijinks with C-3PO not being fast enough to catch up with him, and then they change direction and they pass him, and so on and so forth. But ultimately, they end up on the Falcon, and the Falcon gets away just ahead of Darth Vader. Do we believe at this point that he can sense Luke isn't there? In other words, if we fast forward in the film, Vader's trap is to imperil Luke's friends. But at this point, do we think that he thinks Luke is on that ship?
I do think he knows it's a critical cog in the Rebel Alliance, and that's why I think he ends up continuing to go after it, even when it gets into the asteroid field.
I don't know if he doesn't know that Luke is on there or not, but this is the second time he's been burned by that ship and its captain. And I think even if he knows Luke is not on that ship, he wants to capture whoever's on it and punish them. And then the secondary plan becomes, well, if Luke's not on that ship, these people are his friends and or they're high enough up in the rebellion that we need to capture them and do the torture situation in order to get Luke to show up. And also, by the time we figure out that Princess Leia's on the ship, Vader's already in Cloud City and whatnot, but he's also been burned by her a couple of times too. So the intensity of his pursuit of the Millennium Falcon is not necessarily unjustified, even if Luke isn't on the ship.
This is the ship that allowed Luke to destroy the Death Star. So
Correct.
Yeah, he's familiar with it. The Falcon then becomes his sole focus, and if he had any sense of Luke through the Force, he would realize that Luke isn't isn't there. It almost feels like they have to meet in order to establish a sense of one another in the Force. Am I reaching on that point?
Well, I wouldn't say that's a reach. I mean, the other thing that and again, this is us, as super nerds who've seen these movies a million times, totally, retconning and trying to draw connections. But he knows that Luke Skywalker is his son clearly because of the last name. If Leia is a Skywalker and she has the Force, and we see the Force connection, we don't know why yet, but we see the Force connection between Luke and Leia at the end of Empire. Why doesn't Vader sense any of that in her when he has her on the Death Star in Episode 4? That becomes problematic. Because, like you say, at the end of that movie, at the end of Episode 4, he's like, man, the Force is strong with this dude. And I mean, yes, Luke was actively using the Force in that moment, and he was communing with Ben Kenobi, but there should be some kind of low-grade midi-chlorian, radioactivity coming off of Leia, too.
Like some endorphins?
Yeah, where she's like the daughter of the chosen one, dude. I mean, come on.
In the way that Palpatine completely dials down all of his Force sensitivity and Force powers around the Jedi, if you're actually putting effort and energy into concealing something, Leia's in a situation where she's being tortured and Vader wants information, Tarkin wants information, so she's in a pretty defensive frame of mind. She's intentionally trying to put up the mental walls and prevent them from getting what they want. So perhaps her Force energy goes with it. I don't know.
Okay, now that last statement you made makes sense, because up until that point, it was sounding like you were assuming that she knew she had Force powers.
No.
But if you're saying like her physiology is driving the Force, and so her response, like you say, to the situation is focusing the Force in the same way. Again, now we're talking about another YA novel and some other stuff to write why that works and who, but no, I mean, again, we are definitely nerding down the rabbit hole big time on this, but it's an excellent, but the original question is still an excellent one. If he senses that Luke is not on the ship, then he knows he's gotten away, right? So he has to find him.
Right.
The next best choice is to get his friends and, torture the hell out of him.
Set the trap.
Well, the Millennium Falcon is not as lucky as Luke's X-Wing leaving the planet. It's pursued by the entire fleet.
The fastest hunk of junk in the galaxy, correct?
Yeah, it's outrunning Imperial cruisers.
And not the
local
Corellian, yeah, like the bulk cruisers.
We're talking about the big Corellian ships.
That's right, yeah.
But it is in need of repair, right? It's not at its best. Still fast, not at its best.
That's true.
Outmaneuvers 3 Star Destroyers. In its damaged state, it's not as fast as the Star Destroyers, but so much more maneuverable. So as long as Han keeps changing direction, it's hard for the big ships to zero in on him.
That's true.
They can't get at him with the turbo lasers, and they can't turn as fast as him. Love the fact that the asteroids in the Hoth system were set up from the opening scenes. And then we have the Falcon going into the asteroid field. It's just perfect.
Part 1 of The Empire Strikes Back has come to an end. Thank you for joining us. If you liked the content, please tell others and subscribe to the channel Galactic Initiative. Part 2 will be posted soon. Thank you very much to Sean and David. Galactic Initiative is not authorized or endorsed by Lucasfilm Limited. The name Star Wars and all related materials are registered trademarks of Lucasfilm Limited, a subsidiary of the Walt Disney Company, all rights reserved. Other products and company names are trademarks of their respective holders. Use does not imply affiliation or endorsement. Before you go about your business, remember,
These aren't the droids we're looking for.